What is good, you guys? This is Steven with All Talk On, and it's time for another budget build done for real. So first up, we have the AMD Athlon X4 860K CPU. This runs at 3.7 gigahertz, though I did notice under my stress testing it was boosting itself all the way to 3.9 on its own. I didn't touch anything and it just did it. And as long as you have a cooler on it, don't use the stock coolers with this. Obviously, in this build, because it's cheap, we're going to be using the stock coolers. It will throttle itself to around 3.5, 3.6 gigahertz. Under full load, and will definitely hit around 60 to 70 degrees more on the temperature, so it does get really hot. So I did end up, for my rig, I replaced the CPU cooler so I could make sure it wasn't going to throttle, and I would highly suggest not using the cooler that this comes with, because it's one of those cheaper AMD coolers that really don't do the job. It's not like the ones that come with their 8320, 8350 Black Edition ones. So I would definitely suggest a new cooler, but for what we're using it for, it definitely will get the job done. Though, like I said, I personally just didn't like it. It was a little warmer than I wanted it to be, and it was throttling itself to around only about 100 to 200 megahertz max, which isn't too bad. But like I said, it's a quad-core CPU. So it says 4 gigahertz max turbo, 3.7 base. I will say this didn't boost up to the 4 gigahertz, so max it hit was 3.9. So and that's with temperatures at around 50 degrees Celsius under full load for about 20 minutes. It was only hitting 3.9, which still, I mean, you could overclock it. It's definitely overclockable. So that's why I grabbed it, because it was cheap. It was running for $76, $75, I believe, 75. Rather go for something like a 4350, but this was a lot, about $15 cheaper, I believe, which would have pushed us over budget. And this only runs for around 70 bucks to 80, and the 4300 and 4350 can go to up to 90 sometimes, unless you get it on sale. But I would suggest the 4350 over this, but because it didn't fit the budget, we went with the Athlon. Up next, we have a motherboard. Now, it's definitely something keeping the budget in mind, so keep that in mind as well. We have a Ace Rock FM2 A68M DG3 Plus. This is an FM2 motherboard with all the standard features you would necessarily need, like USB 3.0 header, as well as support for the faster DDR2 or DDR3 memory, and SATA 3 ports as well. So it gets the job done. It's only, as you can see, Windows 8.1 compatible. If you guys remember me saying that some motherboards don't like fast boot with Windows 10 unless it says Windows 10 on it. This one says Windows 8.1. So you might run into some fast boot problems upon using this motherboard with Windows 10, though it's not necessarily a needed feature. It's just a slightly faster boot, and I don't use it because I like to be able to get in the BIOS whenever I want to. Fast boot usually pushes past the BIOS and makes it almost impossible to get into it. And this I paid $46 for. So once again, it's one of the main reasons I got it, because of how cheap it was. And it gets the job done. Like I said, nothing top of the line here, pretty standard. But for our budget, we had to go for something cheap. Next is the RAM. So I went for some Avexa RAM. There's no RAM in it because it's in the computer right now. This was for $30, one 8 gig stick. It had no heat spreader. It was just standard black PCB RAM. Once again, just to get the job done, I'm pretty sure this was 1600 megahertz with latencies of around 11 or 10. I don't remember. Either way, it's not the fastest RAM out there, not the most highest quality, but it was only $30. Once again, had to fit the $350 budget, and it does the job very well. As you'll see in the benchmarks later on, that the RAM isn't crippling it in any way, shape, or form. Next, we have the graphics card. So I was able to pick this up. This is a GTX 750 Ti from Zotac. I was able to get it for $105. This is a 2 gig card, and it's an older card, obviously, the 750 Ti. Now that with the release of the 950 is technically outdated, but because of that, you were able to pick these up for fairly cheap. Usually the only one I can find for around $100 is the Zotac model. Usually runs for a few bucks over 100. Still a very good deal, though I will say that, I mean, I kind of wish it would drop to like, $99 or a full 100, because granted, the extra $5 isn't too much of a big deal for most, but when you're really trying to solve the budget and compare it to something like the 360 that's on top of being a new card, and being cheaper, it kind of makes this card kind of not really something to look at. But it gets the job done, and these are great cards. The 750 Ti is an awesome card, though like I said, because it's an older card, I kind of would hope that they would have dropped the prices on more than just the Zotac. All the other cards run for around 120 to 130 for a 750 Ti, and this was only 105, like I said, and that's on sale. It's not always $105. I wish it would it should even out to the price of a 360, I believe, at least in my opinion. But like I said, great card for the money, gets the job done. Was able to get it for you know, $100. DirectX 11. I'm pretty sure they're going to figure out a way to put this on DirectX 12, though I can't confirm it because I'm not NVIDIA. Because if I remember correctly, this was actually on a different architecture than the 750 and the 700 series. I believe this was on the architecture of the 900 series, if I'm correct. I don't remember. Either way, it doesn't really matter, but they should be looking for ways to implement the 700 series cards into DirectX 12. Though it's not going to be anything like what AMD has at the moment that we know of, at least. So yeah, $100 gets the job done. We're going to use it. Next we have the hard drive. I went for something really cheap. It's just a Toshiba hard drive, 500 gigabytes. I paid $37 for it. It's 5,900 RPM, so it is not the fastest hard drive out there. But I decided to shave money off the hard drive to make sure that I could get something like a 750 Ti and a quad-core AMD CPU, because believe it or not, the Pentium G4400 is cheaper than AMD's Athlon 860K for reasons that I do not know, but it is. So I had to shave a little bit money elsewhere, and I decided the hard drive is the best place to do it. Now 500 gigs isn't really a lot, but it's definitely more than enough to get you started and save a handful of your games. So we're going to use it. Might not be the quietest hard drive, might not be the least amount of vibrating hard drive. It's not going to be the fastest hard drive, but it's a hard drive with 500 gigs, which will get you started, and that's what we're aiming for. Next is the power supply. Now I went for this again. This is the EVGA 400 watt. If you see, I still have the other one, box for the other one in the back behind me, and that is because it works, gets the job done. The 750 Ti doesn't require any external power, so this is definitely more than enough for it. And like I said, EVGA has just always been good to me. I've probably bought like 15 of their power supplies so far, and I've never had an issue with one of them, and that goes for their refurbished and their non-refurbished, their brand new models. And like I said, gets the job done, works perfectly fine, and they have my trust and my money every time I look for a power supply. So we went with it. I paid $30 for this, same price I paid last time. It's a cheap hard drive, though I would suggest maybe if you want to do some future expanding, get something like the 500 or 600 watt for only around $15 to $20 more. Will definitely give you some more headroom for future expansion, but because we're on a super low budget, we're going to go with it, you know, this one right here. Last but not least is the case, which I paid $29 for. It is a DIY PC MA08BK micro ATX case. It is literally $30 cheap case that I found. The Core 1100 or Core 1000 or whatever I got last time wasn't on sale this time, but this case is super cheap, low budget. Once again, gets the job done. I just needed something to hold the parts together that put me in the $350 range, and that one did the job just perfectly. Alright, so now that we've reached the end of all the parts, it's time to take a look at the benchmarks and see exactly what you'd be getting for your $350. So after the benchmarks, we can tell that that 750 Ti is definitely pulling its own for the roughly $100 price tag, as well as having the quad core CPU. We can see that in certain games, it definitely likes having the extra cores compared to the Pentium G4400 paired with the R7 360, though I wouldn't necessarily want to put, maybe I'll do it, but I don't know if I really want to put like a quad core AMD CPU up against a dual core Intel CPU, because we kind of already know how that goes. I've done tests and videos, and there's hundreds of videos on the internet that you can look up about it, is that the games that like stronger cores perform better than the AMD, and the games that like more cores perform better than the Intel. That's just how it's always gonna go. So I feel like there's no real reason to do it, but this computer definitely pushes pretty good performance for only being $350. Extremely well performance. In fact, every single game I played was very playable. I found a way. I got Arc to run pretty smoothly. I might make a video if I get a request or two on how to help out with Arc if you're running on low end parts, because that game doesn't run the smoothest ever. Even on my system, it still runs kind of crappy. So maybe I'll help you guys out. I did post a responded to a comment for someone that was asking me, and I hope that helped them out. But if I need to go into further detail on how to exactly do it, let me know, because there is a little bit of tricks here and there that you can use. Now, I did not use that trick on this computer. I simply ran it as it is because that's how it should be, and it was still very playable. Comparing it to the G4400, I didn't necessarily use the same settings. Like, I kind of tweaked the settings around a little bit to try and get better performance out of it. I didn't do that with the G4400 or with the Pentium G3258 or the 4350 from back in the day when the testing. So the tests can't really line up against each other, so you can't compare it to that. But as far as comparing it to $350 and how well it performs extremely well. Anyways, you guys, that's my $350 extreme budget build for those people who really like having a quad core. More to come, and I'll catch you guys later.